Welcome everyone. Today we are going to be looking at straight stitch. So I have marked the star shape on my trees. I have my thread, my needle threaded and the knot in the end. So you will need to do that. Now I will try this with the spring tension hoop just to keep it as flat as possible. So I'm not going to have the whole thing in the hoop, but it will be enough to keep the fabric taut. Okay, so work out a pattern. I am going to do up at the very top, and so that will be my first straight stitch. Literally, that is all it is a straight stitch. Now so that I get my spacing quite even, I'm going to make the cross, and I've got my ends brought forward. There we go. So straight across. Now I'm going to do the diagonal stitches. So I will go from this one. So we're going right in the middle of those two. And we're going to go across to right in the middle of those two. And then this side, in the middle of those two. And down to the middle of those two. Now I'm just going to make sure my thread doesn't get caught on the frame. And there you have straight stitch, and it's creating a star on a tree. Now if I was doing, if I had very pale fabric, I would tie off my thread at this point so that I wasn't carrying my thread across to the next one. Because I haven't got a pale thread, I'm going to continue and basically start the next one. What that does is it carries my thread along the back of the fabric. So first one, trying to keep that in focus for you. So in many ways, I have also marked this with a cross, with a star. You don't have to mark it this much. You could even just put a dot where you want the start to be and basically stitch it from that. Oops, yep, we'll go that way. And across to the middle. Done. Moving on to the next one. This one here I'm going to show you. I'm just going to poke that up there, but I'm going to reposition the hoop again, just to put that a little bit more in the middle. Makes it easier to stitch. It's also just pulling on it. There we go. All right. I am going to show you how you can make this a little bit different. So we will do the first one. So this is the first cross, like a plus symbol. Okay, so if you want to change yours up a little bit, so we've done the basic one, they're all the same size. If you would like to change it up a little bit, what you can do is come in closer to that center point so that your next cross is smaller. And it just changes the look of the finished star. There you go. So you can see this one has the longer stitches initially, and then the smaller one. This one, they're all the same size. I quite like this one, just gives a little bit more impact. So let's try that one again. So the first cross is the biggest. Blowing that bit out of the way. This next one is quite a bit smaller. So it gives you that nice solid center. I don't want it to hook over that. There you go. This one here we might make the same as the original. It doesn't matter if you want to do across or down first, really. Just, I would recommend for spacing that you do all of it one way rather than trying to work your way around. I just think your spacing will be neater, and therefore your star will look more even. And we have one more to do on this tree. There we go. Reposition the spring tension hoop. Done. So this is all of the, stop the camera moving, the stars. You can see just here, you can see a little bit of light underneath is showing my thread carry, but once this piece is together, you won't notice that, you won't see that at all. Take your tension hoop away, and there is a tree with straight stitch crossed over to make stars on a tree. So once again, the final bit is if you tie a knot, so you can see my thread has carried all the way around the stars. This is the final one, holding the thread over my fingers, tucking the needle underneath, holding that taut, and then using my fingernail, pulling that thread through, holding the knot close to the fabric, making sure it's really firm. Here, because I've got this selvage or this seam allowance, I'm actually just going to take a couple of stitches to secure this thread in there, and it won't come undone. Get my scissors. Yep, they're still the blunt ones, and we are done. This tree we're going to do running stitch. You can see I've marked it with two triangles. I have not used a dashed line, I've just used a straight line. That's okay, either way will work. It's just a guideline of where we want our stitches to go. So putting my tree into the spring tension hoop, I'm just going to slide that around that way a little bit. I have my needle threaded and with a knot in the end, so we're ready to go. So quite simply, we're going to come up at our starting point. My starting point is the apex of the tree. Bring our thread to the front, and I'm actually going to do running stitch in with numerous stitches in one go. So decide how long you want your running stitch to be. You can have your stitches quite long with a short gap in between, with the stitch and the gap
the same length or any combination thereof. So making sure you can see, I'm going to go to the back. I'm using my thumb and I've got a finger underneath and I'm pushing. It's actually this finger I'm using, my middle finger, and I'm pushing up as well. So between my thumb and my middle finger, pushing up. There you go. Back down again and back up again. So you can do 2 or 3 stitches at a time. Try and keep them about the same length. See, mine are not perfect. This one here is not quite the same length. I'm going to be okay with that. And then sort of I stitch right-handed, so I am pulling over towards the left with this thread. I'm using 2 strands of the cotton. So if I come a little bit closer for you, keeping to my design line. That's pretty much all it is. And pull your thread through, keeping along the line as much as you possibly can. Just going to do 2 there, and I'm going to leave my needle parked in there while I reposition pick up my thread, the tree within this little hoop. Okay, and pulling those stitches through. Now this one here, I'm going to stop just before the corner because I'll be able to turn the corner. If you don't like to, or you would like to try not to flip your work over, this way I can just start my next stitch in that corner without having to turn it over, and then do my running stitches along the base. Okay, so I have my first triangle done, and from here I am going to go down into that point, keep you in screen, to the back, pull my thread through, and I'm going to carry my threads. I'm not going to knot and finish. I'm going to carry my threads this portion here, so from the back of this down to here, and this is where my needle is coming out, ready to do, get that bit out of the way, ready to do the inner triangle. Now, as I mentioned in the video about marking the trees, you can do 1 triangle, 2 triangles, 3, or however many you can fit. I have done another one where I've done quite a few. I've done 3 close together. You can see I'm finishing in that corner, so I can just pull it straight out. Should not bump my camera. Going along the base. If you do pace your stitches, you can often make it easier for yourself so it can come up in the corner. Before I get these tangled around these handles again. So that's the last, and take 1 more stitch, and I am going to go to the back here because we're done. Now to knot off the thread, you can remove it from the hoop, which might make it just sit a bit flatter. Sorry if that was really noisy. You will need a firm surface for this, so it could be the table like I'm using, or it could be your knee. And I hold it, tuck the needle under it once, pull it firmly and use my fingernail, and then I pull that loop tight so that it's sitting really close to the fabric, and then I will just thread a couple of stitches underneath to make it neat and trim off my thread. So the back has our starting knot here. I did the first triangle, carried my thread to here, did the second triangle, there is a knot there, and then the threads are tucked underneath. On the front, looks like that. That's running stitch.
Here we go. They've removed the blue lines, and you can see how it looks without any marking. So this has been running stitch, and this is a part of the Just a Tree Quilt-along, this project. Yeah, have fun with your trees. So with stem stitch you can start right at the very edge of your work. You don't need to leave a space. So I'm going to bring my needle and my thread forward. Now I have 2 strands of thread in at the moment. I did start with 3, and I have got some to show you with 3, but at the moment I'm using 2. So you need to take a stitch, and then we're actually going to go back about halfway and then pull the thread back. Now I've got my thread coming out the top, and that is how you need to, well, it doesn't matter whether you have it coming out the top or the bottom, as long as it's the same with every stitch. I am going to bring it to the bottom now so that I can hold it with my thumb. We take another stitch, and we're going to come up. So I'm using one of my fingers underneath to push and my thumb on top, coming back up the hole from the previous stitch and pull through. Again, my thread is from the top. Sorry, just bumped the camera. And repeat that each time. So back up through the hole. As long as the thread comes out the same way, excuse my hand, each time, you get the desired effect of stem stitch. So let me bring it as close as I can. It's just a bit hard to see and do. So you can start to see the effect where there's half a stitch lying beside each other as you go down the design line. So you can hold it firm. I'm going to take, they're all about the same size. And then we come up through the hole from the previous one. Pull your thread along. Again, it doesn't matter if your thread comes out the bottom or the top, as long as it's the same for each stitch, because that gives it that nice uniform look. Now stem stitch will give you a slightly thicker line than back stitch, and obviously if you use more threads it's thicker again. So I'll show you in a minute what 3 threads looks like.
Now I look a bit weird pulling that camera out. It's because pulling the needle out is because the camera is focusing on my hand rather than the stitching. So that is stem stitch. So this tree here has stem stitch but with 3 threads. So you can see it's quite a bit more bulky. Now the design lines are there. I decided I would do only 3 on this one. So that's a bit of a variant that you can choose. This one is also, actually no, that one is 2 threads. But you can see that I've done lots of lines. What are there? 6 lines, 7 lines on that tree. And I will just double check. Yes. Yep, I've only done 2 threads on that one. So that's a bit of a difference as opposed to this one, which does have 3 and again is a little bit thicker, but I've only done the 5 lines on that tree.